Welcome out, everybody, to the No Spake Zone. Once again, this is Angela. I want to thank you guys for joining me and for listening to this channel on shadow work. Today, we're going to continue our testimony. Last time I told you about my story, what it was like living with a narcissistic father, a malignant narcissist, my father was. It is, it still is. I'm just no longer living with him. I want to continue what my childhood story was all about, going into the narcissistic behaviors of my mother. She is what I consider a vulnerable narcissist. Now, this is really new to me today. Back when I went to college, I graduated college in 1993 with a psych degree. The DSM-3R was available at that time. They didn't really have a proper diagnosis for what my mom is. She's kind of borderline. When you look into what that means, she only fits some of that criteria. But when you get into what a vulnerable narcissist is, she hits 8 out of 10. So she's really been a complicated factor in my life. Because she's kind of bamboozled me. She gets her power from being a victim, from being wounded. And she likes to stay in that wounded persona because then you don't hold her accountable for the things that she fails to do. And for the longest time, that's how I saw my mom, as just a wounded child. And in fact, she probably is. But in my story, you will understand a little bit more about how that's not exactly accurate, okay? So, once again, I'm telling you episodes of my childhood that were problematic, that are scars to me, that are issues that I need to deal with. My childhood was both filled with good memories and bad memories. I am not here to bash anyone. I'm not here to just be evil. What I'm doing is explaining to you my shadows, right? The things that have affected me and have stopped me from achieving the life that I want to live, affecting my laws of attraction, affecting my early childhood programming. So in order to get into what that shadow is, I have to tell you my story. So we're going to start off with what my mom is. Like I said, she's a vulnerable narcissist. I think she married my father very, very young. She was 17, too young to know what she wanted. And she also came from a very poor family, I think, where there was either 8 or 9 siblings. I get that confused. And a very, very poor upbringing where her father was an alcoholic. And I suspect, and have never, ever once spoken about it, that there was childhood sexual abuse in her past. And you will understand that theme as we talk about my story. Some of my earliest memories about how my dad and mom worked together. Mom pretty much did everything. She was his indentured servant. She was a stay-at-home mom. And she did all the cooking, all the cleaning, and all the tending of children because that was her job. And basically took instruction from dad. And dad was very, very sexist, as we spoke earlier, very controlling, preacher and a cop, both jobs that give him power and control over people. But as this pertains to my mom, I never eyewitnessed my father hitting mom, but I did eyewitness many, many, many times of her running her down verbally. And one of the closest, well, there was probably an episode where I saw him act out violently when she tried to interfere with his punishment of us at one occasion that I do remember. But we'll get into that story when we talk siblings. But otherwise, I never really saw my father raise a hand to mom. However, his psychological and control over her was very, very, very clear with all his demeaning comments and whatnot. I think I was 4 years old. I think mom was pregnant with my brother. And I remember this, my earliest childhood memory It was scary weather, snowy weather, and mom and the car that we were in, it went off the road and into the ditch. And I believe dad got so mad at her, he pulled a gun on her. So these are my childhood traumatic memories. I'm sitting in the back seat just terrified. Of course, he didn't do anything but just threaten her. And I mean, the threat for her survival was immense. And it was very clear to all of us that he was just ready to kill us at any point in time. Um, Dad did a lot of evil things and he's gotten away with it his entire life. And that's just one of the horrible traumatic memories of what he did against her. But now I want to explain a lot of times what my mom did to survive dad. Instead of leaving him like a healthy woman would have, she oftentimes would say, wait till your father gets home. And she would tattle to dad about our bad behavior. So dad would divert his anger and his abusive tendencies towards us and not on her. She would deflect it. Now, pretty evilly. As a mature woman, as a person who has seen many healthy mothers, that's absolutely not appropriate. But she would do that to survive my dad's wrath. She would line us up and let us get our nightly or daily beatings, any way to shift the blame onto us so she never had to deal with his anger directly. One of the most telling reasons why I think my mom is a vulnerable narcissist is that she never divorced dad because he beat us. She divorced dad because he cheated on her and she couldn't get over it. So that kind of describes the narcissistic tendencies right then and there. It's pretty funny to me that she'll tell you stories that she remembers of when dad was violent towards us and make sure that we are very well aware of how violent he was with us. But never once in that story does she understand, nor does she accept the responsibility that was on her shoulders as a mother to protect her children. She'd be like, oh yeah, I had my girlfriend over one day when I was, in fourth grade, and I told my story. And dad slapped my face. Mom was there to witness that. He slapped me so hard he knocked me off the kitchen table chair. He says, yeah, my friend Marilyn got to witness all of that. Your father was very mean. But she never took it to the next step. She never understood that her role as a mother was to protect me, the child. She just would state that he was violent and leave it. And takes absolutely no accountability for what she needed to do for us. So the other thing that my mom does and still does to this day, I always called her a spider, the master manipulator behind the scene. And I don't know, this must be a behavior she learned at her home, but the triangulation factor and emotional manipulation was very, very, very strong in my mom. I remember earliest childhood memories. I had, in her opinion, very pretty hands. I don't know about that today, but she loved my long fingers, and she would wait till somebody was over and brag about my hands and my fingers in front of my sister, making sure that my sister felt less than. It's one of the tactics she'd always do. Compare and contrast us kids against each other. Make sure that she brags about the things that she likes in the kid in front of the other kids, so the other kids would feel bad. I'm assuming this is a tactic that she experienced as she was growing up, but it's quite vindictive. It creates a lot of jealousy and animosity between the siblings, and indirectly it gives mom control to manipulate. We're all on her string, so to say, so she could keep us fighting against each other. She gets to control the narrative and the relationship, but takes no responsibility for it, I might add. So I'm trying to get into a better explanation of how she triangulates. I don't know that I understood what she was doing, how horribly manipulative it was until I was out of home and I'm still dealing with the childhood trauma of my mom or my dad. I think it was about 32 when I just had reached my limit. At this point, I went no contact with mom. And I'll explain the story. One of the most horrible things that my mom does is she can be very empathic, but the empathic behavior of my mother is very subjective. What I mean by that is there are certain rules that she would play in the family. If she was crying and having a bad day, it was your job to cry with her or you were a bad daughter. If you do not listen to her, if you do not empathize with her, if you do not give her the attention that she demands, she will go to the other siblings and tattle on you and sick them on you. And this is a tactic she still used to this day when I don't say something that she'd wanted me to say or I didn't respond with enough affection towards her. She is very quick to hang up the phone and call up my sister and tattle. And my sister will send me hate mail and whatnot. This is something she's done forever. My sister's the pit bull that my mom sicks on all the rest of us, my brother included. Whenever we don't meet her needs, because her needs come first, this is why she's a narcissist, she will demand that the siblings retaliate. She gets everybody involved, emotionally manipulates, and pulls strings to get what she needs. So instead of coming to you directly and saying, I was hurt that you didn't, there's no direct communication in my family. There's only a minefield of games. So there was a whole lot of triangulation. The other examples that I can give you is I was a valedictorian and I never felt mom was very proud of me for being valedictorian. She was in fact jealous of me. And I don't think she tooted my horn like a happy, healthy mom supporting her kid would be just happy about that. She would say that she was happy, but at the same sense, you could just see her face is just covered with green envy, and she was scared that she has lost control to manipulate me. And the other thing, I achieved something more than my mom was able to. So she really couldn't support that. So when I went on to college, she ignored me a lot of the times in college. I didn't get a lot of calls from her. And if I did, it was usually a letter demanding that I did something wrong. The other things that she did when I came out of college, if she visited me, she'd go, "Oh, would you look at that? You're speaking with all those big educated words now. We can tell you've been hanging out with a different crowd. You think you're so damn smart." So she'd always tear me down. She'd tear me down as a valedictorian. She'd tear me down as an educated woman. Instead of supporting me, she'd have to bring me down a notch because I wasn't playing the game that gave her the center of attention, if that makes sense. I did something that was unforgivable, that I achieved something that she didn't achieve, because the story is it's all about her. It's all about her. So this happened if I dated a guy and he gave me a ring. She goes, "Oh, sure must be nice. You got a ring." Even though she's married again, she's divorced my dad, remarried. But she was jealous of any and all positive attention I would get, and she would make sure to run me down, make sure I felt guilty about any and every event that I had to grow or benefit myself. She would make sure to shit all over, excuse my language. But she would go one step further and talk about me behind my back to my siblings and make sure that they would gang up on me and shit on me because I broke the family pact, which mom is the leader. It's all about mom. And I did something to outshine mom. Ooh, unforgivable. So she's got to sick the siblings on you. And it's a really, really horrible childhood where the good things that you do aren't celebrated because you are not the most important person in the family. She is. So one of the things she did to take advantage of me as a child, I was a very sensitive child, a bit of a people pleaser, still struggle with that today. But I also was more, I just wanted mom to be happy. And she knew this. So she would often come home from a day at work and complain. And she would complain to me, "Oh, my life is so hard. Oh my gosh, I have to cook supper for you kids every day. It's such an ungrateful life, blah, 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 blah." And I got to cook and clean and do every goddamn thing for this family. And she just complained. So on the weekends, every day, or, when I had free time, I would make sure that I cleaned the house for her. Did mom ever say thank you for cleaning the house? No. She would come to me and bitch about, "Oh my God, hey, now I have to do laundry for the whole family. No, it's such an ungrateful job being a mother." So she would manipulate me into doing the laundry for the whole family. So I cooked, or I cleaned. I didn't cook per se, but I did. I'll get into that. Um, I do the laundry for everybody, and she was still not grateful. she she come to me complaining about the yard work. Never did she ever say thank you. Never did she ever say, you know, thank you for cleaning the house. Thank you for doing the laundry. And a lot of these tasks are mom tasks. They're not child tasks, but I did them. She took advantage of me that way. She was able to manipulate me to get the center of attention, her needs met. And that's all that really mattered. And there's so many times this became evidently clear. I mean, the fact that she didn't leave dad for hitting his kids, but left dad because he cheated on her, kind of tells you everything you need to know about mom, just that in and of itself. But there's more. When my father left and the family divorced, it was about age 11. And mom had to go to work for the first time, and she really struggled. She was very prideful. She didn't want to go on to any kind of welfare assistance, which she really should have. Even though we had a nice house, she lost the house. She couldn't pay for the payments and keep heat in it. And that's going to happen sometimes when you lose your major income. But, there were services available, but she would refuse to take advantage of those services. And oftentimes I felt like just a monetary obligation to her. She would cry over medical bills. She would cry over every bill. She would cry, and I'd have to console her. So as early as age 11, I got out there and got a job. And before the Child Labor Act said you had to be 16, I was working. At age 12, I was doing dishes at a restaurant. Very young, but I did everything I could to earn the extra income to pay for my school clothing, to pay for anything that I might need, to take off the burden of mom's shoulders, because it's all about mom. It's all about mom and how burdened she is, and sometimes I really resent that because I wasn't really allowed to be a kid. I was her mom. I was always in a role reversal, taking care of mom, because she didn't want to take care of herself. And oftentimes she didn't want to take care of us. Now, I was angry at my dad for being sexist, but my mom was every bit as sexist. Early childhood memories, I spent my hard-earned money to buy a little radio back in the 1980s, little cassette recorder so you could tape the songs off the radio that you liked. That's what we did in the 80s. We didn't have the ability to download songs. We didn't have any of the technology that we have today. So if you really liked a song that was played on the radio, you waited all day we got to record it. Anyway, at the time it was $50. In today's day, it would probably be like a $500 unit. So it took me quite a bit of time. I earned 75 cents an hour. Woo, car hopping. Based on the tips and everything I got together, I bought this radio. My brother, who's 4 years younger than me, and of course, at this point, I think I'm 12 or 13. So he's 4 years minus that. He's very jealous and he wanted a radio. So he starts demanding that he get a radio. So my mom took my radio that I bought with my money and gave it to Jerry, because there are no boundaries in this house. There are no rights to anything that I may have purchased, because it's all about mom. Mom needed Jerry to shut up, And Jerry obviously is my younger brother. I got it back, but this is the way she parented because it was all about her. So in this age, I was really struggling. We'll go through some more of my childhood drama on another episode, but things you need to know about my mom at this time. She's very lonely and she was busy trying to find her next husband. So she spent a lot of time out at the bars after hours, left us unattended while she's tending to her needs because it's about mom's needs. And she had a fantasy of singing. And my mom is a fantastic singer. I do sing. I got the gift from her. In no shape or form as good as my mom was back in her heyday. She really had a passion for it. And she ended up dating this traveling musician, Jack. And Jack was a slime ball, for lack of a better way of putting things. But he'd come in and out of her life. You know, he'd come every now and again and stay. And I remember at 13, a time where I was asking my mom to do something. I don't know, it was a weekend, and she was in bed with Jack. And Jack had asked if I got them, made him a cup of coffee, give me a kiss. And mom asked me to make him a cup of coffee, me being the people pleaser and wanting to do something. I went ahead and did that. So I went and delivered the coffee. They were both still in the bedroom. Jack grabbed me and French kissed me right in front of my mom. And my mom just laughed about it. So I was completely devastated. And to make things really worse, when we would go shopping and Jack wasn't there, mom would ask, should I marry Jack? Should I not marry Jack? It was my job to console her. It was my job to be her therapist, to be her friend. She would confide in me in all these things that she needed because it's all about mom. And I was so angry because she saw him kiss me, but didn't react, didn't do anything to protect me. And there were times where I'm picking up the house yet again, being the people pleaser, picking up cat food that was on the floor. He'd basically rub himself behind me, right? I knew that things were going to turn in a very bad way between Jack and me if I didn't leave. So I took that opportunity when I went to visit my dad. I chose to live with my father, who I know would beat me, over living with my mom with a boyfriend who I know would try to have sexual relations with me. It was a very, very hard, horrible time in my childhood. I remember trying to talk to her about things. I'd write her a letter and she'd rip it up and she'd say, oh, everything's bad in your life because of me, you know, and I'm tired of hearing it. So she wouldn't read anything that I said because it's always, always all about her. So she devastated me at that time. And when Jack was gone, I think I had a temporary boyfriend who she danced around in the kitchen. And I remember she smooched him on the lips. So there were some serious boundaries, sexual violations, sexual inability to behave in any kind of normal way there, which leads me to my belief that there was sexual abuse in my mom in the past that she's just never dealt with, right? But I've never talked to her about it. These are things that you don't talk about. Anyway, some of those violations really desperately and direly affected me. Her inability to see my boundaries, her inability to listen to me, her inability to act in a mom way to protect me. But she didn't protect me from dad hitting me. Why would she protect me from her boyfriend, you know, behaving sexually towards me? It was just really, really difficult. So at one point in my childhood, I chose to live with my dad, and that ended up in a disaster. As you heard, if you listened to the first part of my childhood testimony, and dealing with a malignant, narcissistic father. Anyway, I'm back with mom. I chose to live with mom. Jack, she eventually parted ways with him. And until she found her current husband, things were not great with mom. But she always, again, she triangulates me against this. All the siblings are triangulated. Mom likes to keep control of her kids and get them to do what she desires by manipulation and by playing games, and never a direct, you know, request. Never on the outside, always under the table. Okay, so things were never good with mom and I. We were not close. I was not the favorite. Jenny was. Um, the elder siblings would say I was the favorite, that I was the golden child, but that's all triangulation. She secretly never, she was jealous of me. She was jealous of me. She was not proud of me. Her jealousy was what I got to see. Um, as I moved out and I got out of college and just making my way very independently, my brother did some bad things and ended up in a prison. There was an incident in prison, and we'll talk about that later. I don't really want to get into the details of that on this episode. But long story short, mom would call me in an emotional breakdown, crying that I needed to give her money to take care of my brother's need while he's in prison. And I suspected there was manipulation happening here, and I stood my ground and I said, you know, if Jerry needs an attorney, he needs to write an attorney and get an attorney to accept his case. Then we'll talk about paying for the retainer. So I was getting calls twice a week where my mom's just crying and beside herself and trying to convince me that my brother's going to die, that he's going to be murdered. Something happened to him while he was in prison. And I would always revert back, did Jerry write this attorney? Well, no. Well, I can't pay for an attorney if Jerry hasn't selected an attorney, and I need to know about that. So anyway, during this time, she called me one day and asked me for $5,000 because she had, her and her husband had cashed in a life insurance policy worth $30,000 and bought a camper. But the camper's $30,000. She's asking me for $2,000 to pay for my brother's need for an attorney. And she definitely had that money. Isn't that the game, right? Isn't that the game? Because mom didn't want to pay for Jerry's attorney. I got the tears. I got the cries. I got the manipulations. I got told that he was dying. All because she wanted me to pay for it. She didn't want to take responsibility or pay for the cost of whatever Jerry's circumstances were. Well, anyway, I didn't have that money. I said, I spent any and all savings. I'm working 3 jobs, folks, 3 jobs. At this point, what you need to know, rent is really high. I had a car payment and I had to pay $500 a month on student loan debt. You weren't able to write it off. All of that came due. I paid, back in the 80s, it was 14.99% interest rates that nobody's ever seen before, right? So I had an insurmountable amount of student loan debt from college that I had to pay back. So I'm working 3 jobs, people. I'm working 3 jobs. And I managed to save any penny, nickel, dimes. But yet it was my obligation to tend to the needs of my brother because my mother didn't want to. I couldn't give her money to get the down payment of her camper. So she was very angry with me. So what she does, this is so evil. She turns me against my siblings. There was more to it. The story about my brother's health, again, they keep saying that he was going to die. Things happened in prison and he really needed the money. He needed an attorney to get him out or get moved. But Jerry never wrote the attorney. So I spent money. I spent what little savings I had to pay for some new furniture. Now, I had taken furniture from my mom's house. It was furniture that came from the 1970s. It was definitely over 25 years old, and it had reached its limit where you sat on the couch, you fell through. There was nothing. I had no furniture. I had no chair. I had no couch. And I went to budget furniture, and I put a down payment on some new furniture for my teeny tiny apartment so I could sit in a chair and not fall to the ground. So what she ends up doing is telling my siblings that I don't care about the safety of my brother, that I don't love him at all, that I'm really selfish and an evil, evil daughter, that I spent any and all money on new things for me. So I got letters from my siblings, from my brother, and from my sister, just ripping me a new one. This is the game. This is how it's always been played. That she will triangulate us. She will keep the truth. You know, I could tell the siblings each time what really happened, but they would never believe me. They'd always believe her. This is the way she handles the family up until this day. There was one point at the age of 32 when I reached my limit of dealing with my mom in this game. And it was I was dating a man who had children, and a child was acting very violently towards me. And I confided in my mom um, what was going on. And she immediately hung up the phone and called up my sister, and they were laughing about the abuse that I was facing behind my back. That was the straw. That was the straw. I had it. And I basically called her and I said, I don't want you to ever call me. I don't want you ever talk to me. I will file a restraining order, and I will call the police. We are done. And I went no contact with the entire family for 15 years. It was probably the best thing I ever could have done. It's been painful, but at the same sense, it protected me. It got me out of all of this horrific emotional manipulation, all of the triangulation, all of the guilt trips. Oh my gosh, my entire childhood is one humongous guilt trip when it comes to mom. I'm never good enough. I never do enough. you know? So, I've always just thought she was wounded. I never understood how narcissistically she is until just recently. I have gone back in contact with her. She had bad health, and it was my decision to open that door, but the triangulation issues still reside. And if I am to talk to my siblings without mother knowing, she feels very fearful because she loses her web. She loses control of the narrative. And I think it's hilarious that we'll get together and she'll say, I really want my kids to get along. And I want to look at her and say, no, you don't. You do everything in your power to put us against each other all the time whenever we don't do what you want us to do. If we didn't act out, she went into the hospital and I reached out to her, but I didn't reach out to her fast enough. I didn't talk to her long enough. I didn't send her a huge truck full of flowers. So the next thing you know, she's telling my sister a whole nother story. So my sister would attack me. It's so sick. And I feel for any person out there listening to this story that has had an emotionally manipulative, vulnerable, narcissistic mom. I feel for you. I feel for you. I want you to write down your stories. I want you to share with me your how you came to terms with it, what you're doing. The hardest part about it is they don't really listen to you. So, and mom's tricky because she can be empathic, but it takes a long time for you to unravel it and realize that the empathy that she uses on you is always subjective to what she wants. Any story that you tell her and she'll act appropriately, oh, I'm so sorry this happened to you, blah, 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 will be used against you even months, if not years down the road, if you do something that she doesn't want you to do. If you didn't respond nice enough to whatever, if you don't come to her aid, if you don't cry when she's sad, if you don't give her gifts when she's sick, if you don't make her the center of attention, she will get her attention by directly manipulating the narrative with all your other loved ones, and she will sick them on you. And it's the most sickening, horrifically dysfunctional family because of it. I am not close to my siblings. When she passes away, there is no relationship. There is no relationship really with any of us. And it's really, really sad because, well, her type of narcissistic manipulation has affected me probably in some ways stronger, not in some ways, definitely more ways, than any other kind of manipulation, because it wasn't until maybe last year that I realized that I have been dating vulnerable narcissistic men over and over and over and over again, and getting manipulated and getting conned. And oh my God, it all stems back from my mother and all my unresolved issues with my mother. I cannot believe that because she's conned me effectively, I have allowed myself to be vulnerable to that type of person. And I have dated that type of person over and over in my male relationships. And it's so very important that we're doing the shadow work that I'm talking about on this channel, so that I can stop this cycle, so that I can cleanse this cycle, so that I can eradicate this cycle. Just, find myself that relationship that I've been needing my entire life. A healthy, successful, wonderful, loving, caring relationship. I am totally worth it. I think any and all of us that have had narcissistic family members, we're all worth having that kind of love. But it's really difficult when you have been programmed to accept these kind of broken people. And I'll reach out. I'm a big-hearted person. I like to help others. And I don't know how many wounded men I have dated. Oh my gosh. I think every one of my people that I have dated have been wounded. And in my mind, I was helping them, but it never works out that way. I think Julia Roberts said something about women, why are you looking for a beat-up man that you need to fix? In order to, you don't need that. Why would you go for a clunker? You deserve a brand new kind of healthy car, right? She's absolutely right. I don't know exactly what her quote was, but I'll have to find it and see if I can put it in the comment section. But I have done that. I have, with my compassion, I have fallen prey to the wounded stories that I hear in others, and specifically men. And I thought, oh, well, I want to help them. And it's a game. It's a vulnerable narcissist. 9 times out of 10, it's a vulnerable narcissist playing a head game to play on my emotions, to play on my sympathy, so that they can get what I have to offer. So, forgive me, my nose itches. If you've ever dealt with a parent that's a vulnerable narcissist, I think it's the most tricky-dicky thing in the whole universe. It's very, very difficult to understand the game that they're being played. The manipulation follows you all the way through your life. If you don't deal with that negative programming and how it's affected you, it becomes an unconscious program that will destroy your entire future. It will play itself out again and again and again and again until you face the truth of where your programming comes from and beat it. You just have to face all of those things that we stuff in the corner. You'll wake up one day like me. I just turned 53 and wonder, why am I still single? Why have I not had a healthy relationship? Why are the men that I date complete losers? What is going on? Why am I always choosing losers? Where is this coming from? I am totally worthy of love. But there's that statement that I don't think my subconscious believes that. I was not programmed to believe that I was worthy of love. I was programmed to believe that I am worthy of being manipulated. I am worthy of conditional love, never unconditional love, because I never had it. So I think that's why I'm dedicating this entire channel to shadow work. I want to tell you my story. I hope that it helps those of you that have grown up in a similar, very negative family, and you can understand why you're not achieving the life that you want today. So much of it stems back to that programming that you had before you reached the age of 8. And it will basically show you the outline of what your life's going to be forever. And if you want to change that like I do, you've got to come forward with your story. Be honest with yourself. Tell the truth. See it for what it is. Unbear, put a light in all those little corners, all of those shadows, and start processing all of those emotions so you can cleanse them, get them out of you so you can live the life that you want to live today. So I hope that you enjoy this video and that you'll continue watching the No Spank Zone. For all of you that are already subscribing to my channel, I appreciate all of you. Please like, share, and subscribe and comment down below. I want to know how many people out there can relate to having a vulnerable narcissistic mom, and how did you come to terms with that? And is it still affecting you today? Take care. God bless, and till next time.